Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2020 Real World Film Festival and industry panel, which is called Show Me the Money, presented by our partner, Rogers, proud supporter of the Real World Film Festival. Now, for people, filmmakers, this is the panel you really want to be on because, again, trying to finance your film, finance your project, you need to know what funds are available. On this panel, we have some people who can really help you just doing the right thing. So first I'm going to run down the panel and then I'm going to speak a bit about what they each fund. So we also have Miss Agnes Augustine. She's the president and CEO of the Shaw Rocket Fund. Hi, Agnes, how you doing?
Hello, very well, thank you.
Carly McGowan, who's the manager of the Independent Production Fund. Carly, how you doing?
Good, thank you.
Nancy Chappelle, executive director, Bell Fund. Hi, Nancy.
Hello.
And John Galway, president of the Harold Greenberg Fund.
Hi, everyone.
Like the beard, I like the beard. And last but certainly not least, Robin Mirsky, Executive Director, Roger Group of Funds. Hi, Robin.
Hello.
So this panel is about showing you the money and figuring out ways to get financed. But the most important thing is to know what fund you're going to speak to and what they actually fund. So I'm going to ask each of the panelists to tell us, what do you fund? So I'd like to start with Agnes.
Thank you. The Shaw Rocket Fund, we invest in children's, family, and youth content. So generally for kids and teens 17 and under, as well as general family. We finance content on any platform in any length, in any format that's relevant to kids, with priority being for us always that it's just really great for children.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Carly?
Yeah, we fund primarily digital short form series. We do also fund television linear shows for, they should be drama or for children. We have production financing as well as new this year development financing for the short form digital series as well.
Perfect, thank you so much. Nancy?
We have 3 buckets of programming that we fund. The first would be short form digital series or web series. The second would be slate development. So we fund up to 3 projects of a slate. And then the third would be a more traditional, and those 2 programs, like the others, are kind of platform agnostic. So we fund projects not only for broadcaster digital platforms, but we also fund programs for YouTube, Facebook, or other SVOD services. And then finally, we have a more, what you might say, a more traditional TV program that requires a broadcaster license agreement.
Okay, thank you very much. John?
The Harold Greenberg Fund, we focus on feature films and short films. And by feature films, we mean films that go into those movie theaters when they're open and we can go to movie theaters, but also platforms like Crave, CBC, CBC Gem, APTN, Super Channel, and short films. Our main focus, though, is on development. So it's the script writing phases and the packaging and financing phases. We currently do not have production funding.
Okay. And Robin?
So we have 2 funds. The first one is the Rogers Documentary Fund, where we make grants to documentary films, either one-off films or limited series of 5 or less. It's a grant program. In order to qualify, you have to have a fair market value license from a platform. This fund is platform agnostic. So it's a platform or a Canadian national primetime commitment from a broadcaster. The Rogers Cable Network Fund is an equity fund for any genre of programming, provided it has a first play on a cable channel or a simultaneous play on a cable channel and a conventional broadcaster, not a streamer. And again, we're open to any genre at all. And again, that's equity up to 20% of your budget to a maximum of $500,000.
Wow.
So those are the 2.
Exactly. So, I mean, you guys get a lot of different applications, right? But there's a lot of people just assume they come with a project and that's pretty much it. But is there more to that when you're looking for the funding, when you're looking at the application? Because someone might come with a good idea, but if it isn't thought out, what about what type of things are you also looking for in regards to funding? Is it like for the marketing plan? And I know it's kind of broad, but I know that you guys get thousands of applications. How do people stand out? Anybody can grab this one.
Well, I'll go first. So for the documentary fund, we're looking at it's a grant, so we're not looking at a return on investment. We're looking at films that will make an impact, that might educate. We'll have a long festival run. We think festival programming is extremely important to the life of a documentary film. So, what kind of impact it will have on viewers, who will like it, will it play well abroad, that sort of thing. Also, what's very important is your financial structure and whether it makes sense, whether you can, pull your financing together, and whether your team can actually deliver the project they say they're going to deliver. Our equity fund is a little bit different because we're looking for a return on investment. So we are looking at your marketing plan. Do you have a distributor attached? Will there be market interest for it? And will we see any of our money back? I mean, and again, is your financial structure sound? Does it make sense? Will you be able to raise the money you say you can raise? And then ultimately, do you have a team in place who can deliver what you say you can?
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Well,
Okay.
on the kids front, I'll jump in on the kids front. So absolutely, because we're an equity fund as well. So we are always looking for really well put together packages that don't just include the financing and the need and the ask from the producer, but also how they're going to be able to reach an audience. And in kids, we have different age ranges. So having a discoverability plan, a marketing plan, and having a really clear understanding of the audience and how they're going to reach the audience, especially where kids are today, because they're on all platforms, and understanding, really having a cohesive plan is what we look for, that makes sense with all the pieces and all the partners. Okay. So that those stand out when you can say, okay, we're going to give kids an experience on various platforms and with the content. That's really exciting for us.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, we have very similar, so similar to Robin was mentioning in our TV equity program, it is an equity investment for the television dramas. So we are looking for very similar thing: market interest, return on investment, audience reach, etc. But the bulk of our programming really is designed to the digital short form series. So it's then similar to what Agnes is saying. It's really, it's a particularly interesting area because you do have to be considering things like audience right from the beginning. So you're thinking about audience, you're thinking about marketing, you're thinking about where this series will go. You're looking for stories, so story-driven content that will stand out in a very saturated sort of marketplace. So those are the types of things we look for as well.
Okay, perfect.
So I would just add, because I think we're all sort of on the same, we all look for the same things. But I guess, what's important in this discussion is that we do have assessment criteria. So the easiest thing for a producer to do is align their application with the assessment criteria. And, because then they really do know what we're looking for, and they can kind of package their application for success based on the criteria that we're looking for. So, for all of us, we have a lot of information available to producers on our websites, FAQs, recorded webinars, all kinds of, detailed information that we hope they use so that they can be successful in their application.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we have our first question from one of the viewers watching right now. His name's Adrian. So he asks, what is your position on genre content? Canada seems to shy away from sci-fi, horror, fantasy content for the gamer demographic, 14 plus men and women. Is this something that might change, or is this still the case?
I mean, I'll jump in just very quickly and say for us, at least for the web series, we've done quite a few genre series. Life XP is the most recent one that jumps to mind. But because we're dealing in sort of the web series, digital series realm, it's a little easier for us to be a part of series like that. But we have found those audiences to be very engaged and very beneficial for the series, as well as sort of not just watching it, but being involved with it, keeping it going and bringing in new audiences as well. So for us, at least, we've seen quite a few. I'm always a little bit surprised we don't see a little more horror, but we might see one coming through our program now. So that's very exciting.
Thank you.
And we at the Greenberg Fund, we certainly get the full range of genres that apply to us, and we have done a number of features that would be kind of considered like genre type things, like Blood Quantum, which opened Midnight Madness last year, and we had a film called Slacks that was at Frontiers, which was about a pair of killer pants, killer jeans in a fashion store. But for sure, the bulk of the stuff we see, for features is film festival type content, and so. I would agree with the person who posed the question. We don't do a whole lot of it in Canada, even though, with David Cronenberg and others, we have a bit of a history in it, but it's something I think that we'd be looking to see more of.
Mm-hmm.
I think you'll also find that because, again, most of us or all of us are actually platform agnostic, that we're actually being able to, to fund series that are from some of these genre platforms. There's like a Fantasy Network or a Shudder. And so these are platforms that may not have been available to us before to fund, and now they are. So I think you'll see more of that.
Okay, that's very interesting. Okay, so perfect. So Robin, I have a question for you and everybody else too. And again, thanks to Rogers for sponsoring this amazing panel. But I noticed I'm talking to 5 different people from 5 different platforms and funding agencies. Do you guys ever work together? Can someone come and say, I'm going to do something with Rogers and I'm going to do something with ICF? Like, how does that work?
So oftentimes we're involved in the same project. It's not that we call each other and say, let's all do this, but, it takes a lot of participation from all of us to get a project done. So I've been involved with lots of projects with Agnes or with Nancy. We have an interim financing fund as well that's a sort of different from what we do, where we will actually interim finance paperwork from all these other people. So they say it takes a village, but it really does take a village to mount a TV or a film production. So we'll often see each other in the same financial structure and in the same project, for sure.
Anything else to add on, anybody?
Well, and certainly, Telefilm, CMF, and provincial agencies, we all often co-finance projects and, do talk to one another. So we always joke, don't tell me that Telefilm loves it if Telefilm doesn't really love it, because I might find out.
Okay, perfect. Now, I mean, John, when we were preparing for all this, we know that there's some possible changes to Harold Greenberg next year. So I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Yeah. So we received the bulk of our funding from Bell Media, and a lot of it was connected to a purchase they made 7 years ago of Astral Media. Those funds have sunset. It was a set commitment of 7 years. And so we have enough funding right now for one more year, the current fiscal that we're in. Our fiscal runs from September 1 to the end of August. So we've got enough money to get through to the end of August on the English side. And I'm out looking for new people to help fund along with Bell. So Bell would continue to fund a portion of the fund, but we'd try to find some additional contributors. And in the past, we've had money from people like Fujifilm and Pattison Group and others. So it'll be something along those lines. But we're advising people. We're open throughout this year. Our board meets every month. So we don't have deadlines. We just have an ongoing deadline system. But you might want to come earlier rather than later.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that. Now, one of the questions that people were wondering as well too is when you guys are funding stuff, I mean, you're looking at the audience and you're saying storytelling. Now, with with all these different platforms you have right now, how do you also, is it a choice, not a conscious choice, but how do you also represent the different audiences that are out there? Because we know, I think you brought it up, Nancy, I've never heard of Shredder, but that's like a horror genre. But then you have all these, you have women programming, you have Aboriginal program, also BIPOC programming. Is there some way that you guys look at that type of programming as well too with your funding, or is it just a blanket slate?
We don't have any mandates to fill in that regard, but from my experience and sort of seeing series and applications coming through this year, there are so many shows and so many great pieces of film and things to watch. So to stand out, it really is sort of fresh, interesting stories, and it sounds kind of just like I'm saying that, but it really is fresh new voices and stories that we are seeing coming through our development program that stood out because they sort of have a fresh thing to say and a fresh perspective to share, and are going to be speaking to a hugely underserved market and audience.
Okay.
Again, I think these digital platforms really do allow producers to develop content for very niche audiences. So you take a channel like Shaftesbury's Kinda TV that's really got a strong female representation and it's supporting LGBTQ plus content. So we've supported a number of series on that channel. And you've got Banger TV, who's creating short form series that are, again, targeted a very niche audience, which is the metalheads or the heavy metal audience. So you wouldn't otherwise see these kinds of programs represented necessarily on traditional broadcast television. So now there's an opportunity to reach directly to these audiences.
We represent, for the Rocket Fund, it's absolutely true that we have the opportunity to really open the creative doors, I guess, as far as what we see, and always keeping. We've always had a priority on diversity and inclusion, and it's really critical when we're looking at content for children that we're representing. Especially as we like to say, the communities that our kids live in and who they are as Canadians. And so when we are all subjective funds, so that means we're able to take a look at what comes in the door and make decisions based on authentic voices. Because I think that's the other piece, is especially, I think all of us, doesn't matter whether you're kids or grown-ups, but I think that ensuring that we have really great authentic storytelling on all platforms and all types of content. So that's always been a priority on our end.
Okay, very good, very good. I appreciate all these great answers you guys are giving me. So we have another question coming in. Do any of the broadcasters collect data, do the broadcasters collect data and have any idea what audiences want to see? And does that shape the funding allocation?
Well, I'll answer because
we're all smiling.
Yeah, we're a bit different. We're lucky at the Greenberg Fund, I guess. We're not triggered by broadcasters, okay. So because we're involved so early in the stage, so we develop a wide portfolio and hope that it can find audiences. So I'm answering that question by saying that it's not applicable to us. Mm-hmm. And so what we do rather is we have this committee of filmmakers that help choose the projects, and we hope that for us is our connection to the marketplace. Mm-hmm.
And okay, perfect. And I'm sorry, can you just answer else? Okay, perfect. The next one is, can the contact info, well, this is separate. They're asking for kids series 2 to 5 and 6 to 10, but I guess they wanted to speak with you, right, Agnes?
Yes.
And we can get them that contact information separately.
Absolutely.
So, not a problem. Mm-hmm. Okay.
The audience, I'm just going to answer the audience question a little bit too, because never really, there's not a tremendous amount of information from the regular broadcasters available. It's always held very closely because it's based on business models. It's also based on funding. It's based on triggering the CMF. It's based on a lot of different ways. So that really isn't available from a traditional standpoint. But what we have seen as we go on all these various platforms, and we're actually more digital, especially on the kids side, that you can actually measure audience much better and clearer. And and there is methodology out there. It's not 100%, and we're all working on that at this point. I'm smiling at Nancy. And but there are ways that you can find where your audience is specifically and start to target them. And we have some kids producers that are really savvy when it comes to figuring out where their kids are and then moving their content towards that platform and being a bit more flexible. But it is much easier on the digital front versus trying to figure it out on the broadcast linear side.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so one of the questions we also had is, when people submit projects to you, is it an absolute necessity to have bankable stars, or can they also use people who are up and coming?
I can tell you from our perspective, if it's a drama series of some sort, primetime drama series, it's nice to have a bankable star, but it's certainly not make or break it point for us at all. I mean, we've been involved in lots of series where it's been, a first time, actor starring role, whatever it is, it's really not at all a make or break it. I mean, not at all.
Okay. Anybody? All the same? Okay.
Yeah, same with us. I mean, particularly, Canadian features, it's really only a few select producers that have high budget projects that would have even, what they might classify as a bankable star. And I would argue that there's really no such thing except for maybe a handful of 5 or 6 people. So the actors should, one, match the roles and match your creative vision for the project.
Mm-hmm.
And they can certainly help if they have, good active social followings and are people that will get out and promote the film or the program. But I would go with the best person for the role if it was me.
Yeah, and it sort of is like what Agnes was saying with authenticity. It has to be, because different audiences will have different stars within those niches, right? Like Nancy mentioned Banger. If you had someone starring in a series on Banger, but they didn't respect or know who that artist was, then it wouldn't work. They would call that out immediately. So the project should determine sort of what direction your cast and your stars are, because they can certainly be different depending on who your audience is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We have a question from Sarah. The question is, if a filmmaker has developed a strong package for their film, has a credible team, but the filmmaker themselves leading the project does not have a strong resume or reliable background, what would give you the confidence in them to want to invest in the project?
Well, I'll start. We always look at previous work, so hopefully they've done some shorts or commercials or music videos or something else that they can show us. And then we would obviously have to take the perceived risk of getting involved in that project. Certainly, having some other people who believe in you, the producing team around you, would really help. So if you came in as the writer, director, and producer and you didn't have a track record, that might be a problem. But if you built a solid team around you, that would certainly help.
We also encourage, sort of emerging creators to look for a mentor or an executive producer that can really support their vision. So, so some senior support to first time, sometimes first time filmmakers would be a good way to package the project.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, incubation of sort of new talent and new producers is a pretty big part of what IPF does, just by the nature of us being in this digital space for a while. So we did in previous iterations of our program require a mentor role, and that was sort of someone that had released something into this sort of rapidly changing marketplace recently to sort of guide you through the process. Even in our new version, you're required to have sort of mentor type roles, whether they're development executives or sort of story editors who are going to help you get those scripts really well written and polished. So that's always been a part of what we look for to sort of help get the new voices and sort of set them up and give them actual funds to be able to pay these mentor positions to help them.
I would also add that have a really strong package pulled together, because we look at who your team is around you and who's going to support you to be able to get to that next level, because we always are excited to see new entrants and we want to have new voices and new visions, so that's really important to us. But I have to say it's a nice polished package, and I don't mean polished as in fancy, I mean polished as in doing your homework, knowing what you're supposed to do. So they stand out no matter what. But if it's a new entrant, we had one great series that came in, and it was a fabulous teen LGBTQ series, and the creators sent in this fabulous video on what they did in their vision, and it was fantastic. It was actually one of the best applications I'd seen in a long time, and they were quite new, but it was very very well thought out and very planned, and I think that goes a long way.
Okay, perfect. Now we have more people added watching us more than we had previously, so some of the questions I might ask you a second time, just because some people we noticed it's coming in a couple of times. So first, again, I want to thank Rogers for sponsoring this amazing webinar. So the next question I have is, in terms of selecting what gets funded, and we discussed this earlier, what are the funders doing to ensure that decision makers also incorporate a diverse perspective?
I can start with how we're situated. So we have 8 people on the board that look at all the projects. They represent filmmakers from various fields in the industry. And we've also ensured that amongst those 8, there's 4 women and 4 men and 4 people from BIPOC communities. So we believe if the decision makers are diversified, the portfolio projects that we select will be as well. And then every project is sent out to a reader that reads the project without knowing who's involved. And we've made sure that there's a diversity in those readers so that we can match the background and cultural perspective to the project. That's our approach.
And just from Roger's perspective, so we don't have any quotas or anything written into our guidelines, but we take into account all these issues when we're looking at projects, whether it's where is it produced in the region, is it a minority language community, is it female driven team, is it a BIPOC producer. We look at everything, and I'd say that our slate of approved projects is pretty representative of sort of Canada as a whole. I mean, I think we could certainly do better, but we only see the projects that have been greenlit by a platform. Mm-hmm. So the buck sort of doesn't stop and start with us. It's sort of, we're sort of the second stage. Mm-hmm. So we can only be responsive to, who's licensing what, or who's commissioning what, really.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. I have another question coming in from Lynad. She's a new female producer with 1 kids web series, self-funded, and a woman's series. As a producer, she gathered a team of mentors like Don Carmody, Deepak Mehta to assist her. The challenge she found with funding applications is having a distribution deal up front. Given today's climate, she feels a distribution deal does not offer MGs anymore. The series concepts are fantastic, which is why mentors agreed, but the stumbling block is not having a distribution deal. So how would she proceed?
Well, I guess the first question, which you can't answer, is where was she applying, but mm-hmm. And when. For our fund, you don't need a distribution attachment until the very last portion, which is called packaging. And increasingly, I would agree with her, distributors in the feature film space aren't offering MGs, so we're being extremely flexible with those rules. The television funds, that would just be part of their overall financing, I presume.
Yeah, well, and I think that distribution has been difficult in Canada for a long time, and it's there's not a lot of independence, and in the kids world it's very narrow, and so there's a distributor attached that's not related to the producer, which a lot of the companies in Canada in the kids space have their own arm, distribution arm. We look at the how's the producer going to either how's the producer then going to leverage the content out in the marketplace if they don't actually have a distributor. So we also don't require one, but we require a plan or that's what we talk about, but it's not just a marketing plan or a sales plan, because that used to be kind of more form like in the past, but now it really is about how do you see your content getting out there and how is it going to actually get in front of an audience. So I think I'd rather say for us, it's more about that than it is about who is your distributor. So how will you get a distributor is important to us. How are you going to get it in front of your audience in Canada, and because we're equity outside of Canada, what's your plan? And I think, and we also are very aware that plans are flexible and have to be in today's world. So.
Yeah, it's exactly what Agnes is saying. So it doesn't for us necessarily have to have a distributor attached, but there has to be a distribution plan, whether that's driven by the producer as well, or whether they have brought on someone else. Again, there's sometimes a difference between what's required for application, and then because we are a selective fund, what rises to sort of the viable projects to move forward with. But so it's not required to be an outside distributor, but a distribution plan, exactly as Agnes said, has to be there. Because at the end of the day, we want these shows to be seen.
Okay, perfect. I love it. You guys are really giving. Sorry, go ahead.
We're the same. We don't require a distributor, but it's certainly helpful. If there's no distributor, we want to see that there's a plan afoot to either find a distributor, self-distribute, something.
Okay,
yeah, but it's not a requirement.
Okay, perfect. And I want to thank all of you guys again. I know you're taking time out of your busy schedule to answer these questions and to do this webinar. Again, we're celebrating 20 years of Real World Film Festival. Thanks to our sponsor again, Rogers. Now, I kind of had a personal question from my own perspective. Have you guys ever funded a project that, not that you personally invested, but it was kind of like one of those projects that was kind of small and it did well on an international stage? Now, you didn't know about it in the beginning, but it was just something that you saw through your funding, you guys helped to take to another level. So I'm asking, Robin, I'm going to ask you that question first.
I don't want to say that Rogers' involvement is responsible for any of these things, but I mean, there's been a number of documentaries that have done extremely well that we never imagined. The corporation, which we gave a grant to, I don't know, 15 years ago, they've just actually released a new one, but the corporation was a film that did $3 or $4 million at the box office and played everywhere. And that was started as a little 3-part doc series for TV Ontario, and it turned into a massive success. Our biggest success was a series called Orphan Black that had been developed with a broadcaster, greenlit, and today it's by far our most successful investment. So sometimes it's surprising, and then there are projects that I'm convinced are going to sell everywhere and we're all going to make money, and nothing happens. So it's that crystal ball thing. But I especially like when we see a documentary and it has legs, and it really changes how people think, how people see the world, and it plays everywhere. That to me is the best outcome.
John, any response to that question?
Yeah, I mean, there are a number, and certainly also a number of films that I thought deserved much more attention and audience than they did, unfortunately. But one I'll bring to mind is a film called The Body Remembers When the World Broke Open. It's basically the story of 2 women and shot all in one shot in Vancouver, and it played Berlin and played TIFF, and Ana Venera's company picked it up in the States, and it's just done amazingly. And it's a low budget, simple little film, but it's personal, and the performances were amazing.
Nancy?
I'd say some of our short form digital series. I mentioned Banger before, and Shredders of Metal, which is a competition. Just the last series, which was a drum competition, got over 1.5 million views in less than 2 months. I'd say the Shaftesbury, again, kind of TV channel in terms of the international recognition for many of those female-driven web series. So, you know, these are all channels that are don't just have a domestic audience, but have an international audience. So, so we're really pleased with the impact that these short form digital series are having around the world.
Perfect. Carly?
Yeah, I mean, I am hesitant to ever take credit, but in some of the early days of the digital series, IPF certainly was the make or break factor in these things getting made or not. We were often sort of the only cash in their financing, I guess I could say. So, I mean, it's just always exciting. It's impossible to ever pick a favorite. And we get to look at success in different ways, views, obviously, and sort of the audience reach is always important to us, but we've had actual web series making tens of thousands of dollars back for us, which is fantastic. So it's always really exciting, and I could never pick a favorite, but I just I love them all.
And Agnes?
Oh, well, we've had a few. One of our, I want to say 3 actually. I was thinking as everyone was talking about, but we have lots. Again, back to the whole, you know, looking at when the whole, like I always say, an ROI besides our return on investment financially is when kids are watching the show globally. We invested in a series called The Next Step. And at the time when it was a scripted reality for kids, which nobody understood, we took a very high investment risk on that one because it was either going to be a hit or a miss. And that one has been global. It's done extremely well. It continues as it's getting into its 8th season. And it is the #1 download on BBC's app as well. So it's been fantastic. The other one that was a bit of not a surprise because it was a great film, but we invested in The Breadwinner, which was Oscar nominated. And that was a tripartite co-production with 3 countries. And that was really exciting for us. And then Angelina Jolie, talk about names, it's very rare on kids that we ever get a name because it's kids, ended up being an EP on it. And that was quite exciting for the producer on that series. And then another one that was really great is a series called Wildcrats, which was I don't know if you remember Zabuma Food years ago, but they created this series. And, you know, that series continued on for years and years on TVO and finally found its momentum right now. And it's after, I think, probably 8 years, it's now has merchandising and it's global and it's done extremely well. So we've seen quite a bit. And I think the success on those shows particularly is just, they're persevered. They were out there just really building a brand. So that's exciting.
And thank you all for those answers, because I think people need to also recognize that. And I know you guys know it already, but sometimes as viewers and Canadians don't realize how much talent we really have here doing things on a global scale, because sometimes until it's seen somewhere else, they don't realize there's all these good things going on right now in our own ecosystem. So I have another question. I'm going to direct it to Carly first, and then anybody else can answer. What advice do you have for an emerging producer who wants to apply for funding, but cannot afford to set up a corporation right now? Most funding bodies do not issue funds to sole proprietorship. Where can you get the help to set up your corporation to help understanding navigating the complex funding systems in Canada?
I think that's a great question. I think for us, you do have to be an independent production company. That's just what you have to be eligible to apply. I know sometimes people will apply with My Production Company Inc. and then in brackets it will say to be incorporated. So I do understand that it is a big undertaking, but I think it is a very complicated and can be a very complicated process. So that's just the beginning. And I think you really have to lay the foundation strong in the beginning to be able to navigate not just the financing, but everything ahead of it is just as hard. So if you don't know, I think not knowing or knowing what you don't know is almost as important as realizing your strengths. So you have to just find either a mentor or a business partner that helps navigate. Being a producer in Canada, where now you are sometimes the distributor as well, it's a whole new skill set. So if you don't know, then you have to get that knowledge right from the beginning, I think.
Okay, perfect. Nancy, would you have any advice for them on that question?
Well, I can only say that the Bell Fund has recently sort of modified its guidelines to allow for incorporation to happen at the time of approval of the application. So, we're giving them some time, knowing that these applications are complex and they require resources. You know, for us, we ask for the short form, we ask for a trailer. So we know that, you know, there's quite a bit of pain already going into the process. So we do delay the requirement for incorporation until that project hopefully is recommended and then approved by the board.
Okay, perfect. Does any of the other funds I haven't spoken, do you guys have that as well, or everybody's just incorporation?
I would say the same thing. I mean, in order to qualify for funding, you don't need to be incorporated as a single purpose broadco, but from a tax perspective, from a interim financing financial perspective, you absolutely must set up a single purpose broadco. And generally for every production you do, they're generally done within different prodcos. For tax credit reasons, there's a whole bunch of reasons, but it's pretty imperative. It's almost impossible not to, and I don't even know how a broadcaster or a platform would feel about mounting a production with an individual, not with a production company.
Yeah, and it's a liability standpoint too. I mean, it's insurance and insurance plus as an individual, you know, it's as everyone said, it's a big process, and you don't want that liability on you.
You personally.
Personally, you want to be able to separate it so that you can deal with whatever issues come up that may come up. Hopefully not, but it does happen.
Exactly. Okay, this is another question that we have from the viewers in regards to financing. And I'm going to direct this to John first. Any advice on what to do when you're in a place where there's lots of interest from production companies and distributors, but it's contingent upon you finding the funding yourself?
Yeah, and I can see that could often be the case because people become much more interested if there's already other people on board or other people involved. I would say, first of all, once you've targeted the funds that you're planning on applying to, a phone call or a meeting back in the good old days, a coffee, is the way to go, right? To introduce yourself. If you haven't actually ever applied to us, and I'll speak for the Greenberg Fund, just sending in a bunch of paper won't help you leap off of the pack, especially if you don't yet have that bigger production company involved or the distributor or any of those elements. So I would say reach out to us and we can talk and help guide you as to how to best put the project together. I'm assuming that this person would be eligible to apply on their own. So if that's the case, then they should apply and they can get letters of interest from those other parties that say, pending on receiving additional funding or support, we'd be interested in coming on board.
Okay, perfect. Any additional responses?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, we're pretty cognizant. We just had a production deadline, for example, last week, and we're aware that those producers haven't stopped working and taking meetings just because October 1st passed. So in the terms of the application context, I always encourage people to try to get as strong of a commitment with as many details in writing as possible. Hopefully that includes money, but if not, something about putting it in writing can sometimes filter true support versus sort of wait and see kind of pass off. So that's sort of what we see happening, especially this year when everything is sort of hard to get nailed down and in terms of firm commitments.
Okay, perfect. Now we have a gentleman named Phil, and this question I'm going to direct at Nancy first and then Robin. Phil says, hello, just wondering if those funding digital series can comment on the health of digital series funding going forward in the wake of Quibi's struggles. They do have some different reasons why they felt that everything going on had an impact. But just wondering their thoughts, because during the time that everybody was supposed to be at home, high-profile short video content failed to catch fire. Nancy?
Well, that might be the case for Quibi, but it's not necessarily the case for all digital platforms. So we're receiving, I mean, we have a deadline on Monday for our short form series, and we know that these deadlines have been consistently, oversubscribed to. So we're getting, more applications every time a deadline comes around. And there's quite a diversity of platforms. Remember, for us, essentially, so long as a platform is available to Canadian audience, and as long as the platform markets to that Canadian audience, it's eligible. So you're talking SVODs like a Highball TV in Canada. You're talking about a Sika TV in the US. You're talking about YouTube channels, Facebook. And so, I feel sorry. I feel Quibi's pain, but we're not at a loss for platforms.
Perfect. Robin?
So we don't actually fund short form content. So our minimum requirement is, sort of a half hour broadcast or less. So we actually wouldn't really apply to me, because, as I said, we don't fund short form series.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would just say Quibi's not the first platform that was going to be the next big digital savior, and it won't be the last. I sort of joke that I have lip balms that they give out from platforms that tend to last longer than the platform. So we encourage producers to, of course, seek out any of these platforms, get the money while they're young, because they may not last, but their cash is still good. But I have a lot of thoughts on why Quibi maybe didn't work out, but I have no fear in the health of short form digital series.
On the kids front, short form digital has been around for a long time, and it's not going away. And I think that, and in fact, what we're seeing is the increase. I mean, that it is digital, but now that a lot of the traditional broadcasters are taking on those short form content on their digital platforms. And there's opportunities for those short platforms to grow, or short content to grow into something different. And so it's not really pilots or development, but they certainly have a value, and people are watching short form content. So I agree that just because it's one platform that's not working, it just had a lot of expectations that the audience, the habits of the audience are still there, and they're still watching that short form content. So I think that it's, again, making sure you have the right platform where your audience is.
Now, okay, just that's an interesting question. Is there not a certain type of way, but is there a certain type of thing that you look, because you guys have talked many times about various platforms. So for example, Robin has talked about the fact that they look at minimum 30-minute content, but you guys are also talking about short form platforms are doing well as well. Have you ever found like examples of programs that have done well in all, or is it basically just pick one? So that when they're applying, they should know, like you said, pick your platform. But you'll see, and as an example, you might see a TV show, which is a reality-based scripted show. You'll see their shows popular, but then you'll see different segments on YouTube. So is there like a certain formula that they should be looking at to do something like that, or just stick with the one platform? What would you say to that, John?
I mean, it's less relevant for features.
Mm-hmm.
We do have short film program. So that's kind of, the most relevant, but those are specific, like 15-minute kind of beginning, middle, and end shorts. And they do a festival run, and then they try to do as many platforms as they can, and we allow them to, at that point, to spread it as far wide as they possibly can. But I'll leave it to more of the digital experts to answer the hard.
So, Carly?
I mean, there's the boring producer responsibilities of checking the guidelines of the funding programs you're pursuing. So there's very few I know of where you can have it both sort of as a TV program linear as well as a digital short form series. So what the example you're saying where you're seeing shows get broken up into YouTube clips, I think we may view that if it's a linear show more as a marketing strategy than a brand new sort of series that stands alone on its own. It creates a bit of a domino. I'm already questioning how you would build out a budget that would include sort of a long version and a short version. We've seen series of ours sort of get released short form episodes over the course of a season. And then as a distribution strategy, they will sort of package them together as a long, sometimes as a film. But that's sort of more as a distribution option after the initial release. So if you have funding in your series from different programs, they will have requirements. So you're already focusing on what type of series you are doing by virtue of what funding you're pursuing.
Okay.
Well, we've seen some innovative funding on the kids. Again, I think kids is just slightly just because kids are expecting content in different ways. So we always have to look at that, and definitely some of it falls under marketing and discoverability and how are you going to pay for that. We've had a few of our series where they've taken their last episode and so the financing, whether it was 22 and a half hours or whether it was, we had one that was a lot more, but a big budget on that one. And they took the last episode or two and they were financed traditionally, but they were actually split into shorts so that they were able to then figure out how to do the production value and keep it all the same and use a cast. And then be able to take those shorts and have it part of it. We've also financed the regular series and then did the shorts, audio-visual shorts to go with it. So they were each individual series, but we financed them both at the same time. So there's different ways that we've done it to ensure that there's, so that we can actually do those shorts and they can be on various platforms.
Okay, perfect.
And a few years ago, we were involved in a feature-length documentary that, aired on television and had a festival run, and it was an 80-minute film. But for digital, they had pre-sold to a platform, and it was 8 10-minute films or 10 8-minute films, and that was a documentary. So, but we funded it as a feature doc.
Perfect. Now we only have about 5 minutes left, and again, I want to thank you. And again, you've been watching Real World Film Festival celebrating 20 years, and you're watching the Show Me the Money industry panel brought to you by Rogers. Now, not to put you guys on the spot, but I just want you guys to say something before we go from each of you, about the fund and just how people can get in touch with you guys. So I'm going to start with Nancy.
Okay. Well, you can get in touch with us by phone, email, info@belfund.ca. We're very responsive. You should check out our website because we always have webinars. So we invite people to the webinars in advance of our application deadlines. And if you've missed a webinar, we encourage you to, as I said, view them online because we record the webinars for your viewing pleasure. Mm-hmm. And then if those that are going to apply to us on Monday or at the end of November for the slate development, mm-hmm. I just again encourage you to go to the website and do the homework. And my one piece of advice for the application process is really, once you're finished, it's like, think about those old days when you had a paper in university or college and you got somebody to read it before you put it, before you sent it in. Mm-hmm. That's what we encourage people to do, because you're asking folks to read and assess your application, and all that they have to assess is what's in front of them. So we encourage you to get somebody to read it and to poke holes in it so that you can be successful.
Thank you so much, Nancy, Executive Director of the Bell Fund. John?
Yeah, I was just looking through the participants there while Nancy was talking to see who I recognize. So I'm saying hi to a fair number of people that's whose names I know there that have applied to us, but obviously there's some that have never. So for that group, I always say, reach out to us first. We can help you. We would rather have your application make sense for us than not. So we can help you a little bit, guide you that way. We can't produce the movie for you. We can't make the application for you, but we can give you certainly some guidance. And you have to kind of introduce yourself a little bit. So now you would reach out to myself, and I presume Real World can make the email available to everybody. And the other person at the fund is a gentleman named Alan Backus, and we can make him. I volunteer him to be available as well.
Thank you so much, John. As president of the Harold Greenberg Fund, Robin.
So I would really say the same thing. I have a small team, and we're all very approachable. I would go to our website, rogersgroupoffunds.com. We have one deadline left for this year, and it's an equity deadline that's coming up in November, I think. And I would just, as I said, or as everybody said before, be really clear and concise in your application. Get somebody to read it over. And if you have questions, the best thing to do is call or email, and we're happy to answer them.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And that's Robin Mirsky, Executive Director, Roger Group of Funds. Agnes?
Well, we all have the same answer in regards to going to the website and having a look. So absolutely. Our application process, we have a few different ones. One that's very application focused, another one that is proposal based. So it's very collaborative. And we just recommend that if you are new to the fund, and to give us a call and email, so info@rocketfund.ca, or just reach out to me directly. And my team, like we're very available and very accessible to be able to walk through. And to John's point, we're not producing it for you, but we certainly are available to help you navigate through the system and be part of that process. So just reach out, especially if you have a content that you're not sure about whether it qualifies. We always ask that you just ask us in advance before you go through the entire application process. Mm-hmm. If you're not sure, call us. Let's make sure, because the worst thing is to do all that work and find out that you don't qualify.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Agnes Augustine, President and CEO, Shaw Rocket Fund. Carly?
Yeah, I obviously much the same. So I encourage everyone to check out our website. You can read through our guidelines, but you can also check out different series that we have funded to see the type of shows that have come through the program. We're a very small team. It's myself and our CEO, John Taylor, and my colleague, Mark. So that's it. But we are always very happy to chat through, and we have our next deadline will be coming up next spring. So there's plenty of time to read through. And if you have an idea or a series that you think would fit, it's much nicer to chat through the questions that you may have right now versus, the day before the application deadline. So all of our information is on the website.
Thank you so much, Carly, Manager, Independent Production Fund. And I want to thank all the panelists for coming. I know you're very busy, but people get to put a name to the face, especially when it's very intimidating going for funding. So the fact that you guys could take time, speak to them, let them know some of the processes, we really appreciate it. And you've been watching Real World Film Festival celebrating 20 years, and you've been watching the Show Me the Money webinar brought to you by Rogers. I want to thank you. I think we got like 30 seconds left. So I guess I'll just, I don't know what to do. We got 30 seconds left.
Well, thank you for moderating. So awesome.
Yes,
my pleasure.
Thank you.
Trust me, just talking to you guys, I got a better understanding. So when I want to come get my money, I know what I got to do. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, we now. We're waiting for it to end because it's 2:30. There we go.